Good morning, everybody. My name is Pam Myers. My co-host Erica Yoakum with Virtual Personal Assistant. Our show today airs every Thursday, not airs, but it's recorded every Thursday on Zoom, called Three Essential Questions. And we basically ask the same questions of every guest that we have on the show. And our guest this week is a personal, you just told me, a personal
emotional
life coach. Yes.
Fitness coach.
Yes. Who also happens to be, sorry. Yeah. No, you're good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Short attention span. Sorry, Marty.
I know. Yeah, it happens. And goes along with the allergy brain, right? And who also happens to be my neighbor. So welcome, Marti Murphy.
Hi, Pam. Hi, Erica. This is great to be here.
Yeah. So Marti, tell us how has the whole pandemic situation affected you and what you do for a living?
Well, that's interesting. I would say I'll go to personally first. For me, my life hasn't really changed that much because I've worked out of my house for over 10 years. And, up here in Placitas, you're a little bit more isolated from everything. And I just have different beliefs about the actual COVID itself. So I'm not afraid of getting it myself. Even if I do, I think, oh, it's just going to upgrade my system. So in that way, I've not been in fear around that at all. But I also am very respectful that there's people that are much more at risk. So I take precautions around that. And I'm pretty isolated to begin with. It's pretty much me, my husband, and our 6 animals. And so that really has not changed for me because I've been doing that. My adjustment happened 10 years ago when I started working out of my house without the socialization. But business-wise, it's definitely different because when people feel, I would say, like a financial crunch, they all are like, okay. And even though we hear about, the benefits people are getting that have lost their jobs, and some people are making more money now than they were before, they're sort of my understanding is they're squirreling it away, to make sure. So that's changed. And it really, so things slowed down a bit, but it was sort of, I believe in divine timing and divine order. And it was really kind of perfect because my husband and I also have rental properties, and we were remodeling and putting 2 up on the market to sell. So it created the space for me to be able to go do that, as well as staying active in my business. So, and we're under contract under both, supposed to close on one today, which is great. And the other one at the end of August. So that's when I was like, oh God, this is sort of divine timing. And Erica, like we were talking about just before we hit record, it's like if I went to lack, I could go, oh God, this is terrible. But I was like, no, this has actually opened up a space for me to help get these 2 homes up and ready for sale and have that experience. So in that way, it's actually all kind of been working pretty well.
And it's funny, I've seen and heard a lot of people say that, like, well, I got the house painted. Like, I've been putting that off and not doing that, and I got the house painted. Or I went out and I finally got the garden set up the way I want it. And it's interesting that when we're forced to take a step back, that sometimes other things pop up that go, hey, that thing that you want to do, it's been hanging around in the background, you can do that now. And you go, oh,
right. Yeah. Well, and if I could add this, I just think this is important. My daughter is the one that pointed out to me when the pandemic started, the NASA footage of China and how the pollution had cleared. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't even think about that benefit to this. Right. And it's almost like the way I look at it, and my daughter goes, Mom, it's like Mother Earth just said enough.
Right.
So to me, yes, I understand there's people dying. I do feel really fortunate that my sister passed away last year. And I mean that because if I had not been able to be there with her, I wouldn't have liked that. So my heart really goes out to people that are in that circumstance. I feel really grateful that I was able to be there with her. But I would say I do see so many benefits coming out of this. And for whatever reason, I want to say this, I just believe that whatever's not working is coming to the surface. And if I could say it this way, I feel like the white patriarchal culture that we've all been really under for so long is coming to an end. And it always can kind of look a little messy before that happens. And I think we're three women here. It's, it's time.
Laughing because I've been listening to Hamilton, and I love Hamilton, by the way. And I've been listening to Hamilton, and they're having their discussion about whether they should honor their treaty with France. France was in the whole monarchy had been overthrown and all that, and was America going to go and fight and help support France and all of that? And Hamilton says, well, their heads are in a basket, so if you'd like to ask the head, should we honor our treaty? And he says, I don't care, I'm really super dead. And I think that's brilliant. I think I would like to think that we're heading to the point where that's all we're going to come together, and that, like you said, the white patriarchy is going to be changed drastically. It'll be very interesting politics are very tight in our house.
Yeah, right. It's certainly a thing that I think most people are like, let's, like, my best friend and I have very different political views, but we actually can have good conversations, and we sort of agree to disagree on stuff, which is really nice because we don't.
I've seen this comment that we've always been told not to talk about politics, religion, and sex. What should have been is taught how to talk about it respectfully.
Oh, I love that, right?
Yeah,
instead of backing away entirely, if we had learned to be able to say, oh, that's an interesting way to look at that, here's how I look at it, and have that respectful conversation, we probably wouldn't be in a lot of the messes that we're in now.
So, yeah.
Completely agree with you.
Yes.
So
sure. Now we can run the world because we've got it all down.
No, I've seen the statistics on the countries that are run by women and the countries that are run by men for this whole COVID thing. We kind of killed on that. I mean, no pun intended. That was not
good way.
We're kind of kicking butt.
Yeah.
I think because women are overly cautious. Like, we know if you're getting sick, go to bed. Just like isolate. We do that automatically.
Right. We do.
Right.
COVID, what was coming into being was more, whatever you want to call this, sort of feminine aspects, like stay at home, be quiet, have family time, be around each other more, rekindle that, go to the park, get outside, keep your distance. But and it's fascinating to see what has happened with the earth because of that.
Yes.
Right. Well, so it turns out there have always been dolphins in Venice. That was that one came out and everyone was like, oh my God, there's dolphins in Venice. Right. There have always been dolphins in Venice, but the water was so churned up that you couldn't see them.
Yes.
Now that the boats are pretty much at a standstill, the water has cleared, all the silt has settled, and now you can see these animals like the octopus. There are octopus in Venice. Big ones.
Wow.
Cruising around in the canals, but you can now see them. So I thought that was an important distinction too, not just like, this is a miracle. No, they've always been there. We just, again, it's like the fog lifting over China.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just when you settle down and let all that crap blow away.
Yeah, imagine.
Right.
So how have you responded to this situation?
Well, I've been busy, which is hilarious. That's what I mean with those things. And what I would say is, regardless of my views, I've always erred on the side of the more cautious person. As far as the pandemic, I wear a mask. It's mandated in New Mexico. I do it. I'm not going to have a fight about it. No, like, what's the point? Who cares? And so I've just been doing like practicing the social distancing, doing all of that stuff, and always defaulting to the person that's more cautious about it. I just feel that's important. I don't want to push my agenda about it. So that's really how I would say I've handled the whole thing. And like I said, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go in town this week. Pam, you can relate to this. I'm going to go in town this week. And then I find reasons not to go in. Or I'm trying to, it's more like, do I want to drive in there? And it's really not that far, but it's more like, no, I'm just really comfortable here with my animals. So
when I discovered that I could get my groceries like delivered to my front gate,
right?
Like this has been going on forever, right? But I've talked to people about that, and they're like, I've been doing that for years. Erica, where have you been? I'm like, well, in freaking Walmart. I don't know. I didn't know that I could have them delivered, and then to have like this was and I'm a tech person, right? But I was still blown away by the idea of getting texted by my personal shopper in the store saying that brand's not available. Would you be okay with this brand? And going, oh, I'm not there. And it's like, I'm shopping. Yes, this is so awesome. So
I love that. Yeah.
I'm perfectly, And I've been to Walmart now.
Yeah, right. Her face, I love it.
The energy. Walmart's never been like, hey, laid back, right? And that's just not the energy in Walmart. But now it's like scary. And the energy is very crackly and not conducive to thought. Like now it's a mission-driven thing, and it's a mission-driven endeavor. You go in, you hit the 3 things, and you're out as fast as possible. And yeah. So if I cannot, I prefer to not. I'm with you. So I built a pool in the backyard. Pam and I both have these big pools, and they're not big pools. They're stock pond pools, but we have pools in our backyard and places that this is now my haven. If I don't have to leave this property, I'm really happy now. I figured
that's a great point, Erica. My not desiring to go in there is honestly, it's less about COVID and it's more about like the churning of people. And right before it was really hitting and we went on lockdown, I remember being in a store and I called my husband and I just said, however this sounds, I go, energetically, dude, we need to kind of stock up on a few things. And not that I'm a hoarder. I am my husband always jokes, you are a little bit of a Mormon. Because I have always kind of like, well, it's on sale, so 2's good, 10's better. And then I don't have to go back in and shop for a while. I've always kind of been that way, but I got this sense of fear.
Yeah.
And I always said fear was the bigger virus. Like that's how I felt about it. Fear's the bigger virus. And I thought, it's probably a good idea just to at least have an extra bag of rice around, not 60 bags. And I had toilet paper, so I still didn't quite get the whole toilet paper thing.
You and my husband, he pegged this in January. He read about the first 3 cases in China, and he went on. He's like, okay, so the poo-poo's about to hit the propeller, and he said, I want a year's worth of toilet paper. He called this in January. And so we started stocking up, and we've got 3 20-pound bags of rice, and so it's funny you're saying all these things, but so my garage went from, I had a small space like for a few extras that I had over here to an entire floor to ceiling 4-foot section that's now food, just because you're right. If I can go like sugar, and Smith's, speaking of Mormons, the Smiths had the case lot, and we went and stocked up on just as much as I could stuff in my cart. And now I don't have to, we haven't had to buy sugar in like a year, and
Yeah.
chicken broth and things like that. Yeah, I'm with you. If I don't have to leave the property,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very comfortable. Just
Yeah.
this is how I socialize. You know what? I've been saying this for 10 plus years, that, hey, let's just jump on Zoom and have a meeting. No, I'd rather have it in person. I have now had more meetings via Zoom than I ever had in my business before in person. I couldn't do it physically in person. I couldn't do it going from meeting to meeting.
Much.
Right. Yeah. And it's so much more convenient. You don't have to leave your office, and yet you can get everything accomplished in exactly the same way.
You don't have to put on pants. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So how do you see, I want to come back in a minute to what you've been working on, but how do you see yourself coming out on the other side of this whole pandemic situation, Marty?
If there is another side, I don't know.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's funny. I'm going to say I'm optimistic about it, even though I was raised with PTSD. So it's always like waiting for the shoe to drop. But it's interesting to me that I've really not felt that in this pandemic. Mm-hmm. I've just been more like, no, I'm hopeful. And I really believe it's not what's happening is necessary. So I see myself coming out on the other side of it, less driven. Because I think that's part of the patriarchal culture in our culture in the United States. Push harder, do more, put your big girl pants on. If it's going to be, it's up to me. And I have that spades. I have it in spades. And I was like, I got to unhook from that. And even though I did hear about people like, God, I'm like meditating more. That was not me, because we had these houses going. But I do feel like I'm becoming less driven, and less driven is more trusting. Doesn't mean I always feel that way, that I don't know, somehow it's all going to work out. And that alone has been huge for me, to find more hope and trust in myself, not myself, in whatever. I always say the great spirit, the source of all, Fred Flintstone, the dinosaurs, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But there is a force at work here, in my view, that's greater than all of us and knows what it's doing. And I just feel like that's something I would say I've been tuning into more, which has been really nice. And I'm, the pushing energy, it's like, oh, stick a fork in me, I'm done. I've, pushed myself to,
I had not ever heard that analogy that you just said. If it's what was that? If it's going to be, it's up to me.
Right.
And I think is that something that we're ingrained with as women? A lot of us that we've, because I was brought up that way too, right? You want to.
Yeah.
But that's not really necessarily a productive or healthy way.
No, and I like the whole saying, put your big girl pants on. I even use it, and I'm like, why am I using that? That's like, I think it's punitive. Put your big girl pants on, just buck up and do it. That's patriarchal culture.
Right.
Make it happen. And it's like, where's the space for life to happen through us rather than by us?
Grace. Where's the space
love that.
for grace?
Yeah. Right. Grace. What a wonderful, even that word. Grace.
Yes.
Grace is, so my husband and I, we've had our ups and downs, but grace is not having any money in the bank come Christmas time and having a huge check come out of nowhere. That's the grace. It's like, we didn't make that happen. That's the grace. And we're a Christian family. Like, for us, it's God. And so, but sometimes you have to back up and stop pushing so hard yourself so that you can let that grace come through.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Slow down long enough to actually, acknowledge it.
Right. There it is. Slow down long enough to acknowledge it. That's so true. Yeah.
Right.
Love that.
Now, you've been also really busy working on a book, right? So tell us about that.
So I'll show you the book.
Yeah. Please.
It's called Forbidden Emotions, the Key to Healing. And this is where I was talking about the whole big magic thing, like ideas come and go. And if you don't jump on them, there's a patriarchal culture. If you don't jump on it, it's going to go to someone else. And I'm like, and when I heard that, I'm like, no, nobody's going to write this the way I'm going to write it. And I literally say this, and this isn't false modesty. It came through me. Like the idea came to me about 8 years ago, and I do EFT, so tapping. And what I noticed in people is the people, most of us are pretty locked up emotionally, not because there's something wrong with us. We just live in a culture that doesn't promote emotion. And I called it forbidden emotions because these feelings are okay to feel. These are not. And if you think about this, what I saw with people is, especially in women, like I would say anger is a far more forbidden emotion for women than it is for men. For men, it's sadness. Now, that's not true of everyone, but it's just something I've seen in the work that I do. And we make that off limits. Like it's not okay to be angry. We might call ourselves a name if we're angry. Or we might, like a guy might call himself a name if he's sad or if he's vulnerable. And to me, we were born installed with this amazing palette of emotions that covers a wide gamut. Why would we not be meant to feel them? And even so down, like my belief is if we're all make it more acceptable to feel whatever we feel, even the most forbidden, like I hate this person right now. You're not going to stay in hatred if you allow yourself to feel it. And because we're a human being and also a spiritual being. So when we allow ourselves to feel like right now, I freaking hate this person. And instead of telling ourselves, oh, don't feel that, just think happy thoughts and everything's going to be okay. Just think positive. Then you're doing what I call, well, I don't call it, I've heard this term, spiritual bypass, and I call it happy thoughts through gritted teeth. Like I'm just trying to be positive and think everything's gonna be okay. And I heard this term recently, toxic positivity.
Oh.
And what I found, we've all met that in those people. And I did this myself 10 years ago when we went through a really rough time, my husband and I. And I remember, because I believed in the law of attraction, like if I could just think positive about this, it would be okay. And it created so much stress, so much terror, and so much fear. I can't get these negative thoughts out of my head. Like I was never supposed to have a negative thought or a negative emotion. And then I woke up, found tapping, and I'm like, no, understand the brain now. No, thoughts just fire off. Emotions fire off. You can't stop a negative thought, but you can interrupt it. And tapping allows you to interrupt it. So when I started working with people, I would notice a lot of what I would call pent up anger or resentment. And I would say, well, if you could say anything to this person, anything, they're never going to hear it. I'm not suggesting that you walk up to this person and put your finger in the face and tell them, what would you say to them? It was amazing. Even the most demure client would use the F word. I'd say F you. And I would say, are you okay to tap on that? And they'd go, sure. Or some would, and that's their words, not mine. And we would tap on it. There's a tapping technique called rant tapping, where you rant it out. And we would rant tap. And they would say all the stuff they always wanted to say to this person, but was off limits to say. They did it in a safe and healthy way, not in front of this person. This person's never going to hear this. And I am not kidding. Every single person at the end goes, I feel liberated. I feel like I got this toxic, poisonous energy out of my nervous system that I kept telling myself, I shouldn't feel this way. Hatred's bad. I shouldn't hate this person. I should be the first to forgive. And that's all great. But what I find is you don't have to try to forgive. You don't have to try to not hate someone. If you go into the emotion and use any technique that's going to change the physiology, you free yourself from it. And then guess what happens?
Right.
You naturally come to, in EFT, we call it a cognitive shift. You go, you know what? They did do the best they could. It might have sucked for me, but they did. And you're congruent with it instead of going, they did the best they could. Because you're in complete denial and denying your own emotions. So when we give ourselves our truth and our full flower of emotions, we set ourselves free. And I personally believe there would be a lot less racism, domestic violence, road rage, animal abuse, abuse of any kind. If people were like, it's okay that I feel jealous, it's okay that I feel hatred, I don't want to stay here, but now I have a way to allow myself my truth that doesn't hurt anybody. In fact, it not only frees me, but it frees that person from the ties that have bound us. And that is, to me, the gist of the book in a nutshell. It walks you through how to recognize that, how to process through those emotions, and free yourself.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff. Yeah.
It is. It even makes you feel good just listening to you talk about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So where would we find your book, Marti?
Well, yesterday I just found out, and people are like, you didn't know that? And I go, no, you can get it online at Barnes & Noble. You can get it online at Target. You can get it online at Amazon. You can get it online at Walmart. You don't even have to go into the store, Eric.
I know. They'll mail it to me.
Yeah, so I was like, yesterday, like my publisher sent me something. I'm like, Barnes & Noble. Oh, and I looked and I'm like, oh my God, it's in there now. And it's been kind of these nights. I didn't have a goal about that, which people would be like, you don't have a goal about that? I was just like, let all who need it find it. And he sent me some statistics and said, yeah, Barnes & Noble's selling it online now. So I was like, well, that's exciting.
Yeah, congratulations. That's wonderful. That's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, so you're a book nerd, because for you, that's more important than it's being on Amazon. Most people are like, it's on Amazon. That's like the end all be all. But you're like, it's in Barnes & Noble where all the other real books are. And not the books and the canned tuna. It's like where people who want books go.
Right. Yeah, and even in Target, I'm like, it's in Target? I found all this stuff out. Like, the publisher's like, yeah, well, because I knew it was going to go on Amazon, because, but then he sent me, yeah, Walmart and Target picked it up. And I'm like, really? Like, that's what I mean. Like, it's like, let all who need it find it. That's literally my prayer about it. And I feel emotion when I say that. I'm not trying to push an agenda about, all right, I'm going to have this many sold by this amount of time. And not that I think there's anything wrong with that, but for me, it just felt like,
Long.
yeah.
Right.
Got it. Marketer, if that makes sense. I follow the breadcrumbs that, trust in God, but tie your camel, pray to God, but row to shore. When I get an impulse, I act on it, and I trust that impulse is coming as guidance and direction, and then just where it takes me. So.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Impulse and intuition too. Don't you think intuition is a big factor?
Right. The authentic self, the intuition. Absolutely. There's that impulse. Oh, maybe I should act on that.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely something as women that we're told not to, that you're just being overly whatever. And it's
emotional.
Yeah, right. You're too sensitive.
Like,
right.
It took me a long time to get to the point where I go, that's my gut is saying, what? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
Gut check.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, Marti, thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. This was really enjoyable and fun.
Good. That's what we like it to be, Yeah.
So if anyone wanted to reach out to you, what would they do?
Well, probably the best thing is just my website is my name, MartiMurphy, Marti Murphy, and you can contact me through that. If anybody wants to call me directly, you're welcome to, and I just leave a voicemail. I can call you back, and I'm happy to give out my phone, 505-220-0295. But my website, there's all kinds of freebies on there. The home page is the book, and it directs you to links. So yeah, that's probably the best
Cool.
way.
Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you again, and we wish you great success with your book sales.
Thanks, ladies. It was really nice to connect.
All right. We will tag you when we share this.
Yeah, awesome. All right, ladies. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.